and everything, you know. She didn't want him to go. So, you know, I mean, I remember seeing the body count on TV and the whole bit, you know. So it used to really scare me.
The two wars that you weave together in Enemy Ace, World War I and Vietnam, were fought half a century apart. How difficult was it to bring them together visually?
That was the toughest part in the whole book, was actually gauging how much to use of both the different wars, because Vietnam is so strong in everybody's mind, especially the American consciousness. I mean, you can't get away from it. I mean, it's more than real, you know. And World War I is this romantic, you know, thing, so it was really hard to gauge, because the Vietnam stuff would just always overpower the World War I stuff, you know. And so I tried to keep it to a minimum. And we can never know what it's really like to be there, I mean, unless you've been there. And I got a lot, I mean, you know, I had someone say that, well, what right do you have to write any of this? You know, you're not a soldier, you've never been there. And I talked to Joe Kubert about it, and I said, you know, gee, I don't know if this is right. He says, well, why not? He says, yeah, you were never there. He goes, but you did experience it. You know, I mean, you were a kid in the 60s, and you went through it. You had a different experience, and your take on it is just as valid as any soldier's. And, you know, you've read all the books, you've talked to these people, and you've got, you know, you really have a different perspective. And he goes, and who's to say it's right or wrong? He goes, sure, you have just as much validity in it as anybody else.
It's interesting that George juxtaposed Vietnam with World War I. I mean, both wars involved new weapons and tactics that overwhelmed the generals. Both dragged on year after futile year, and both decimated a generation. Although, to be fair, World War I consumed almost 6 times as many lives as Vietnam. George mentioned his concerns over writing about a war he wasn't in, because the first rule of writing is write what you know. What that really means, though, is write what you understand. After all, Peter Straub never fought in Nam, but as one of the top horror authors working today, he understands terror. Straub has written 3 horror novels featuring Vietnam veteran Tim Underhill. Coco won the 1989 World Fantasy Award, then came Mystery, and finally The Throat,